Ordered.
Prashant, shall we start?
We could start, yes.
Sure. Okay. Hello and warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and the participants who have joined us today for this important learning call, What's on Trial, State and the Fourth State. On behalf of Freedom Software Law Center, New Delhi, I am delighted to express that we are thrilled to have such an accomplished group of panelists, diverse and engaged audience joining us for this pivotal discussion. SFLC is hosting this important call to understand the broader implications of recent legislative developments on freedom of speech and digital rights. And to discuss this significant issue, we have with us Mr. Gautam Lahiri, who is an independent journalist with an experience of more than 4 decades in media and is currently the president of Press Club of India. He has been a former member of PIB and Lok Sabha Media Accreditation Committee. He is regular analyst in BBC Bangla. We also have with us Ms. Geeta Seshu. Ms. Seshu is a senior journalist and co-editor of Free Speech Collective and is engaged in issues concerning freedom of expression, working conditions of journalists, gender and civil liberties. She is also an advisory board member to SFLC.in. We also have with us Mr. Meghnad S. Meghnad is a YouTuber, activist and journalist. He goes by the name Meghnad on YouTube and his streams cover news, public policy and parliament. He also aided multiple MPs in the past and also worked with News Laundry. Last but not the least, we also have with us Megha Bahal. Ms. Bahal is a lawyer who has worked on both prosecution and defense within the criminal legal system in India. She has litigated extensively on concerns of democratic freedom, democratic rights, including those relating to journalistic freedoms. Megha is a Fulbright scholar and has recently completed a master's in law from the University of Texas. The panel will be moderated by Mr. Prashant Sugatan, who is a legal director of SFLC.in. Over to you, Prashant.
Thanks, Asu. And welcome everyone to this discussion. Definitely an important discussion as there's a lot of regulation, a lot of talks about regulation happening. And I mean, as a country where people have suffered a lot from the erstwhile colonial rulers, for speaking truth, it's quite unexpected and quite that we would not guard this freedom of speech jealousy. But that is how the situation is, where the Press Freedom Index, which is released by Reporters Without Borders, shows that we are ranked along with authoritarian regimes. We have had a series of regulations, right from content creators, journalists, intermediaries, all being targeted, media being targeted. Initially, when we had a brief period where there was not much regulation and we had a free run with users, intermediaries, all being free to act and free to express their own whatever they had to say on the internet. But slowly, the situation has changed with governments, not just in India, but across the world, trying to regulate online media. We have seen that happening a lot in India these days, especially with the IT rules. The recent, that's the 2021 version of the intermediate rules, regulations. And then now with the discussions about the broadcast bill. So it is, we can generally see a trend of what is happening with more and more control being exercised, with traditional media not being much of a threat, I would say, to the government. Where the 2021 intermediate rules was mostly targeting the digital media platforms. And now with the broadcast bill, it's essentially the independent content creators who are being targeted. I mean, I don't want to waste much time, and since we have just 1 hour, let's go straight to the discussion. Let me start with opening remarks from all the panelists. Gautam, I'll start with you. Over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
and good evening to everybody. Uh, Actually, what has happened for the last 10 years, actually, we know I don't want to deliberate on that, but I will rather focus on what the steps and what actions we have taken from the Press Club of India in these months. So I want to say because we had an idea that unlike other countries, especially European countries, India is the only country where there is no national media policy or media charter. So first thing, we worked on those issues. And in the last 2023, after our press club election, the managing committee first decided to institute a committee with eminent senior journalists and lawyers who painstakingly did a research work. After that, we came out with a draft Media Transparency and Accountability Bill 2024, which is we have released, and it is in our Twitter handle and etc. You can watch on it. I will request everyone to go through it and give a suggestion also for that, what we can do it more precise a law should be in the country. Secondly, because I want to say small 2, 3 points on this issue that we found that because we broadly what the media challenge is lack of transparency of ownership with the emergence of media monopolies. Number two, financial coercion through the misuse of power to allocate government advertisement. Third, coercive action against journalists by state and non-state actors. In these three issues, we are also added one is the access to information for the media, which is day by day is now it is very closed door, only to selective person journalists are given access to the information, where the parliament is also non-accessible now these days. We have taken up those issues and written to both the speaker and chairman. And on this draft bill, I will quickly go through it. That mainly it covers about sports 6, 7 areas, which actually we will be dealing later on in later stage after getting all the inputs. But meanwhile, on the 20th May, before the Lok Sabha poll results were declared, we have invited all the journalist bodies, media bodies, especially all the press clubs of different states, journalist organizations, from the digital as well as from the broadcasting media. And we have discussed about the laws which you have just mentioned, uh, uh, Sugalsan, that the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, Press and Registration Periodicals Act 2023, Information Technology Amendment Rules 2023, which directly taken away the right to inform or diluting the right to information, and also Cable Network, TV Network Regulation Act. Thankfully, the broadcast bill, we were planning something to have a seminar or a discussion on this issue, but right now we are told that the bill is put in hold. Whole idea is we are impressing upon the government that please consider or have a discussion with all the stakeholders, those who are directly affected or benefited. They should be consulted first. We have written to the government, written to the minister. So far, no response has come. Only thing that broadcast bill has been deferred for the time being. Similarly, this meeting also we have the demand the Digital Personal Act and that are intended to weaken the Right to Information Act, which I have said. And we have demanded, lastly, there should Press Council of India no longer a body which can look after the media industry as a whole and how the enlargement of media, not only the print, broadcast, now digital, social media. So we are proposing to form a kind of a media council with the due representation of everyone of the stakeholders. So that is our idea. I will again lastly request you to only to, if you don't have, we will try to send you the Media Transparency Act Accountability Bill, which you are trying to propagate. We have met some important political functionaries. They are planning to have a meeting with us also too. So in the coming future, I will love to have all of you to be a party to these deliberations. That will be my initial comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Gordon. Definitely, it is even as per the government's pre-legislative consultation policy, it is important to have consultation with all stakeholders, which unfortunately didn't happen with the recent broadcasting bill, and not just with that, a few of the recent legislations as such. So that definitely is concerning. Geeta, I will hand it over to you for your initial remarks.
Uh, okay. Thanks so much, Prashant and SFLC, for organizing this discussion. Over the last few days, there have been quite a few discussions on the very same subject, and taking off from the kind of laws that the government has been unrolling with great speed. I'd like to look at a few points, really. I'd like to flag some things here, which we don't normally discuss. And I'll take off a little bit from what you said. Perhaps it was a casual comment, I don't know, in your opening remarks, where you said the print media wasn't much of a threat. And it is totally true that neither the print nor broadcast media constitute any kind of threat to this government, or even to a government that would probably be interested in what people are saying, or interested, or at least sensitive to the kind of issues that the public is raising, that people are raising, because neither of these two media, unfortunately, is in any way responsive to the voices of people. So we can then understand why the government, this particular government especially, is so intent on trying to regulate digital media through every means possible. And they have done this to print media, they have done this to broadcast too, and they're doing it to digital media. Because at some level, I feel that this government is totally uninterested in dealing with the media as the fourth estate, which is why I was quite interested in the way you all formulated this entire discussion. They just don't give it any importance. And that is hugely disturbing for a democracy. When a government bypasses, in the first phase of this NDA government, it virtually bypassed traditional media. It did not hold a single press conference. And it continues to do this kind of bypassing. In the last, in the general elections that we saw, the run up to the general elections, there were a few very curated discussions that the government, that the prime minister was willing to be participant to, but never in the manner in which the prime minister of a democracy should be engaging with its media. Absolutely no, none of this. Again, when it comes to even access to parliament, the media is finding it a problem because accreditation, various other kinds of access is simply not there. Investigative journalism is under huge attack, not just because the government has cases against journalists who even try to do some sort of investigative journalism, raids on media houses, but the most important is the way in which it completely ignores important stories, good groundbreaking stories that come up. So journalists are left literally high and dry. And the way in which the government also tries to, sort of disabuse the credibility of independent journalism is very, very disturbing. So all of this actually gives us a kind of atmosphere where serious, independent, important journalistic work is absolutely not given any importance, where any kind of investigative work is continuously regulated by state and non-state actors. So the last thing that I'd really like to say in these opening remarks is something that we also need to pay attention to. The government is also a huge paymaster for the media. And advertising revenue shot up during the elections, and a lot of advertising revenue was being given to this media. So, actually, what Mr. Umakanti had said in his remarks, I think, are really important. The fact that we are going back to some kind of a discussion on the ownership of legacy media, on the relationship of this legacy media to the state. Now, in this situation, where digital media is really a media that is, that one assumed would be a media where people talk to each other, where people have conversations with one another, and where people are capable of doing that thanks to technology, where there is an older idea of an internet which was not controlled by either large corporations or by the state, where it was an internet that one had a vision for. And that vision is slowly disappearing before our eyes. I'll stop.
Thanks, Kedar. Yeah, thanks, Kedar. So definitely, I mean, like the initial peer-to-peer internet that we had, where we had the smaller players, that is no longer there. We have, I mean, essentially, even when it comes to internet, we have the big multi-million-dollar corporations ruling the show. Megha, as the lawyer in the panel, over to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Prashant. My initial reflections upon reading these laws tell me that, these laws which, try to govern and regulate digital media publications, they're actually, number one, gravely impacting constitutional rights of all of us. They intervene with freedoms to express one's views, which are guaranteed under Article 19. They intervene with my right to remain silent in case I'm tried under Article 20. They intervene with my right to a free and fair trial under Article 21 when evidences are collected behind my back. And thirdly, and lastly, it also intervenes with my right to privacy under Article 21, and about which I will talk later on in the talk. So these laws seem to be actively curtailing these constitutional rights that are guaranteed to me, number one. And secondly, these laws not only broaden the possibility of weaponization of the legal system against those people and those institutions who speak truth to power, but in fact, when I read the provisions of these laws, it seems that they expose all of us to, to this fear of continuous surveillance on an everyday basis, of just the mundane aspects of our life. And therefore, essentially, my understanding of these laws is that they are only increasing police powers. They are only, making us move towards a more police state. Yeah, so those are my initial reflections.
Thanks, Megha, very much. In fact, all the freedoms that we cherish, the freedom the freedom and right to privacy to start with, definitely that is important for you to exercise all your other rights, like whether it's freedom of speech or freedom of association, etc. Yeah, Meghnad, over to you.
Hi. I am not going to mince any words, just giving you a pre-warning.
That's
I'm
what we
very,
expect from you.
I'm very unfiltered in general. So please, I'm just going to collect some thoughts which other panelists said and sort of give my opinion on it. So I completely agree with Geeta, especially the last part when she said, I feel like right now we are being governed by a bunch of bullies and unimaginative people, right? And that is very evident from the broadcast bill. The reason why Megha had this little bit of a smile is because when I saw the broadcasting bill, the unofficial copy that was circulating around, mind you, they didn't even bother to show the actual copy to anyone. Um, when we saw that, I was sitting with a few lawyer friends. We spent about 8 hours going through it clause by clause by clause. We had a really good time. We laughed so much at some of the provisions that they had made. Even though they are dangerous, what we were laughing about was that some of them were unimplementable, right? They were trying to have global application of a law, probably to punish people like Dhruv Rathi, who is making them uncomfortable. They were trying to make every creator have a grievance redressal officer, and not just that, a content evaluation committee to certify their content, which is like a censor, a personal censor board. I have to hire my own personal censor board, apparently. Then we have to get a license to make content. Then, you have to pigeonhole yourself into like one genre. I don't know what sort of thresholds they would bring about. The thing is, what we have seen throughout, like just to give you like a little bit of a meta picture, is that as Geeta also pointed out, they first tried to control the print media. They were very successful at it because the source of the information was very limited, right? Then they tried to control the broadcast media, which is the traditional TV news broadcast media, which they have successfully done till until very recently. What has happened is that the internet has become a very primary source of information for everyone, right? And I maintain this because I think everybody who is on the internet today is freely going around and getting their own information in whatever way they want, right? So it's like a P2P relationship, essentially. When I make my content, someone will watch it on their phone. So it's like a direct relationship I have with my viewer. What they try to do is apply the same laws that they used to control the previous forms of communication on the internet, right? And what ended up happening is that they realized that it is kind of impossible to control the internet in the same way. Right. I know people here who are familiar with how the internet works and how everything. I think, I don't know, Geeta only mentioned this earlier that, or you mentioned this, Prashant, that the earlier internet which we had, which was basically, such a wonderland, no? Like, it's like information flowing around everywhere, no gatekeeping, even by corporations, right? You could go on websites, etc. Then it evolved into what it is today. But let us not forget that it was offered up as a democratic medium, right at the beginning. Like it was supposed to be a democratic form of sharing information between people, right? That kind of threatens the narrative control powers of regimes all across the world, including ours, right? Especially ours, I would say, because our current regime is very obsessed with controlling narratives, right? And when they see narratives slipping away and going into some other medium or some other people talking about things that make them uncomfortable, they try to clamp down on it. And they try to clamp down on it extremely badly also, right? Which means they will have clauses like, if a content creator has genuine hardship, they can be completely given exception from the entire law. What does a genuine hardship even mean? Like, I stub my foot and I have a genuine hardship, so now you exclude me from the Broadcasting Act. What does that even mean? There are some words which they have used in this draft of the broadcasting law which are extremely dangerous, which are extremely subject to interpretation, and also can be applied willy-nilly on anybody who makes them uncomfortable, while also creating exceptions for people who are creating narratives in their favor, right? So that has been the approach of this government throughout. The laws are not for everybody. The media regulation laws are never for everybody. They will be selectively applied on people who make them uncomfortable: independent creators, journalists who are doing their jobs, who are giving information, actual information that affects their lives. But if you are someone who is in their camp, you can basically do hate speech on TV. You can do whatever you want. You can basically make up random things like Riya Chakrabarti black magic karti hai, whatever you want, right? Like on television or wherever, and you can get away. No consequences. The second larger point I wanted to make, I say bullies because not only are the government the bullies, the the private and the broadcasting media, legacy media organizations are also bullies. I have copyright strikes from Smita Prakash recently, right? Because I used a 2-second clip from one of her podcasts, right? Now they are a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They have millions of subscribers across social media. Every news channel picks up their broadcasts and shows it, etc. I have 65,000 subscribers. I barely make any money from my YouTube right now. Am I supposed to fight these people? Like, and how dare they, honestly? I mean, how dare they come after someone like me? Because, like, why? Like, you have such amazing influence on the internet and everywhere, and everybody listens to you. Why am I the one you are targeting? So, yeah, anyway, those are my opening remarks. Yeah.
Thanks, Meghnad. Yeah, we are, and definitely the days of decentralized democratic internet is over. Yeah, let's anyway face reality and see how we can cope with it and fight the forces in power. As such. Gautam, I mean, you have, let's say, decades of experience. We have seen, see, even during the, let's say, period of emergency, we have seen how media could, let's say, fight with the government, talk to the government, even protest. Some, we had newspapers which came out with blank pages to protest the censorship at that period of time. But now we are seeing, in a way, the traditional media kind of agreeing with whatever the government says. So what are the real challenges that journalists face these days?
First and foremost challenge for the journalist, as a serious journalist, working journalist, I feel that access to information is a challenge. Because during the emergency, as you have mentioned, even the journalists are allowed to enter parliament. Now, in this era, even the journalists like myself, I told you that initial remarks that I had a long and distinguished press card holder of the parliament. I used to be an advisory committee member. I am not allowed. So we are a senior journalist. The government had decided, branded all the senior journalists perhaps as a threat because the COVID protocol is nowhere in the country, nowhere in the world is in place. But in parliament, it is still, they are following the COVID protocol. In the name of COVID protocol, selected group of journalists are allowed, about especially the junior journalists are allowed. No seniors can go because you have to take a permission from the chair to go for a day, or that you can. But as it earlier, we used to go everywhere. Now, you know, the central hall where we used to meet all the politicians, lawmakers, used to discuss with them. That scenario has gone. New parliament building has no central hall right now. Even in the press gallery, I am told the people who are going to cover, their arrangements are such that even the other houses members are given the row in the journalist gallery. It had never happened. So I am saying, like in many government offices, the pure entry as an entry of a journalist is banned. You have to take a permission from an authority to enter, and you have to say whom you want to meet. So this kind of scenario, even I didn't see during the emergency days also, though journalists were harassed, arrested. Those days, society used to treat them as a heroes, national hero. Now, spread of this hate speech and the kind of ultra-nationalism through the broadcast media, now if a journalist is hounded, he is termed as a anti-national. The society is turning, like recently what had happened, you all know, the digital media went raided and hounded rather. All the journalists' phone, laptops were taken away. And even the junior journalist, pub reporter, her landlord asked her to vacate the house because government says she is a threat to the society. This kind of scenario earlier it was not there. So it now I think the fight is not limited within the journalist fraternity. I think the time has come. So I think some kind of a people who believes in the kind of a freedom which mentioned in our constitution, they should all club together, come together to fight the menace and to urge the government, and only collectively we can do this. I am sure that definitely because this government has not got the same kind of majority what they got last two elections. That's why there are many signs of their, you can see that they are backing out from many decisions. So I think that this is a time. And one thing I should add, I have forgotten to add in my first initial remarks, why the media funding is very important. Why it should not be from a national media fund, which can be regulated or controlled by a national media body. That can be discussed later. Like our public broadcasting system, they're funded by the government exchequer, means from your tax or my tax. But when 56% of people have voted against this government, their views are not reflected in the public broadcasting system, not in the parliament television. So that thing should be challenged. That you cannot, like in the British broadcasting system, or even recently some German editors came to our club, they described even they could criticize their chancellor in their national television. Public broadcasting system, that facilities, that freedom they can enjoy. So this is a scene that we have to see, and definitely we have to find out together how we can move. And I think perhaps what one panelist has said is correct. It's not about print and audio, only audio visual. Now the media has expanded. So I think media outlet definition has to be codified. Codified in the sense that who is media outlet? That according to us, those persons are engaged in production, generation, distribution of news and opinions in text, audio visual, via newspaper, magazine, internet, terrestrial, satellite broadcast, radio, through any electrical mode. So that all of them should be treated as that entity called as a media outlet, whether it's an individual or as a group of people. And that unless you codify that, what I'm started with that, there is no media policy in our country. It is an all government takes all kind of laws, any criminal laws are being applied against the media now. So that's a separate another issue that we can deal with later. We are trying to also build a kind of a consensus on those issues, how we can bring out a new charter on that. So my suggestion would be, it's a good initiative you have taken. We should continue with this discussion. And if you have any other specific questions, then obviously I'm ready to answer.
Definitely. I mean, thanks, Gaurav. It is important for us as a community, not just journalists, lawyers, everyone to be involved in this. In fact, we at SFLC, we are building, in fact, a nationwide network of lawyers called the Digital Defenders Network, essentially to support journalists, support anybody who is facing such an issue, anything to do with their rights, right to freedom of free speech, right to privacy, if you are being surveilled, things like that. So yeah, we are definitely doing that. Geeta, you have been let's say, tracking censorship, tracking free speech violations over the years. What do you really feel? How have things changed over the years? Are we in like a very bleak kind of a scenario? And what can be done?
Obviously, yes, we are. And yeah, we've been tracking free speech violations, and we generally look at these categories: killing, the attacks, threats, cases, arrests of journalists. There are about 5 still in custody today. Censorship. So if you look at the numbers, killings may have reduced, year on year. We are seeing not as many as we did maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But impunity still exists. And we still have maybe we have 3 convictions over the last 20 years. In one conviction, for instance, actually 4. I mean, I forgot this one, the conviction of the head of the Dera Sacha Sauda, who has just been released on furlough just a few days before the Haryana election assembly dates were, the elections to the assembly were announced. So impunity is a major issue, and it hasn't gone away. Attacks have increased, cases lodged against journalists, and these are cases lodged not just under the draconian laws, where bail is really the very, very distant exception, but also cases under what we see as threat to harmony, or any kind of threat to public order, or religious enmity between people, which was earlier 153A of the IPC. So we're seeing a lot of those kind of cases. And while each case, I think, has a very, very huge chilling effect, and each of these instances are really, really important, the overall climate for censorship is huge. Self-censorship is palpable, of course. Media houses, like I said earlier, are raided. Journalists face reprisal for their investigative stories. or even if, as in the recent instance, the very first case of under the new laws where they tweeted information or opinion about an alleged lynching. So we have both state, non-state actors who operate with this kind of impunity. And as Megha already pointed out, and she told us, there is legal sanction for this kind of very excessive regulatory mechanism. The third thing I really want to say is this gray area. The gray area which doesn't really fall into any direct legal regulatory mechanism or which cannot be documented. And I'm thinking of these friendly calls to summon journalists to police stations, journalists on no-fly lists, journalists being, told very gently or not so gently to surrender the passports. And this is happening in Kashmir. And we usually talk about Kashmir as being a kind of laboratory for the way the government operates with journalists, with the media, with citizens everywhere. So that's a huge area of concern. And this kind of non-documentation is also happening with social media corporations who take down reports, they delete accounts. We've had one instance just last week of a journalist of Dainik Bhaskar who has written about how Facebook just deleted her account. The third area which we have journalists again being terribly under siege is from media houses themselves, because there is job insecurity, there are retrenchments, layoffs, journalists who do break stories and find themselves being thrown under the bus. There are journalists who face the kind of self-censorship directives. So there is a very, very precarious situation really for any kind of independent media or any kind of independent journalism that can happen. It's happening from the state, it's happening from social media corporations, it's happening from media houses themselves. So the ultimate situation really is that that one cannot expect any kind of really good investigative journalism to be sustained. Umakanji again came up with this very interesting idea, which has been discussed a lot in the past, about funding for journalism, funding for good journalism, and maybe having state funding. I don't know. We really have to discuss something that will help us get out of the very bleak mess that we are in.
Thanks, Geeta.
Well, Umakant was previous president. Myself is
Sorry, Gautamji. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Gautam.
I am carrying on his legacy.
I'm so sorry.
No, not at all.
Yeah, over to you, Megha. Specifically, if you look at the current legal situation and the new regulatory developments, what are specific issues that you feel are important that we should be concerned about?
I'm a criminal lawyer. So when I look at these laws, I look at procedural safeguards in the first instance. Of course, offenses, we all know, there are offenses where one can be, attacked for free speech. But when I look at the procedural safeguards and how they are being diluted, I feel scared. So for instance, look at what the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023 does, DPDP Act. It claims to, protect personal digital data of individuals while balancing the need for such data to be used for lawful purposes. Now, think of Prabir Purkayastha's house being raided for 10 days and all his digital devices being searched for and seized and then searched for. Now, what does this DPDP Act does to protect someone like Prabir Purkayastha? Nothing. Why? Because there is an express provision in the DPDP Act which says that if somebody's case is under investigation, somebody's facing prosecution, then the provisions of this act, especially 2 chapters in this act, which gives some right to a person whose data is being accessed, or obligations of the institution or the data fiduciary, as they call it in the act, who's accessing the data. Those 2 chapters would not apply to a case where a criminal investigation is ongoing. So what DPDP Act does actually is little to protect, the case of, for instance, the seizure and search of digital devices. Now, before DPDP Act, we still had Puttaswamy 1, 2017, which said that, right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21. And there are Supreme Court petitions. There are 3 petitions pending before the Supreme Court where the petitioners have sought for some interim guidelines, because the current statutory regime does not regulate the police powers to enter somebody's house, search and seize, seize and search, I would say, seize and search devices. So Puttaswamy gave us that some little protection, based on which 3 petitions are currently pending. Now, what the DPDP Act does actually is expressly create a regime where, anything, it gives a free pass to investigative agencies to take out, to access data from my devices. So an act which was supposed to provide me protection does nothing it actually expressly increases powers of the police in such a situation. So does Prabir Purkayastha have a journalist like him have, or his institution have any protection by the DPDP Act? No, unfortunately, no. Look at the IT rules, the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code rules 2021, which were recently updated. Every intermediary in that, under that act, is mandated to preserve any kind of incriminating content. This is under Section 3 for at least 180 days for investigative purposes. So, which means that data which it was data I uploaded on a private intermediary's handle, that can now be preserved for 180 days. And so, is it not a violation of not only my my privacy rights, but also my right to a fair trial, my right to rights under Article 20, where I have a right to remain silent? All my data, for instance, I'm putting out there on a private intermediary's handle, is now being sort of being made available to an investigative agency behind my back. And similarly, even after deletion of my account, the IT rules say that the intermediary is mandated to save my personal information for at least 180 days. And that data can be provided to the state. There is the private intermediary has the right to terminate access or usage rights, or remove any kind of non-compliant information under Section 3. So for me, and the third aspect that you can also look at is the usage of these broad terms across all these acts, in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of the nation, in the interest of the security of the state. These are phrases you will find everywhere across these acts. I'm not saying that these are not legitimate goals for a state to pursue, but how much of my constitutional rights can be taken away or abrogated in order to meet those goals? And what are the checks on the state when they are trying to pursue these goals? I mean, ultimately, in a democracy, that's the fight, right? Balancing of my rights against states' powers and arbitrary exercise of powers. And so, use of broad terms, for instance, in the DPDP Act, one of the legitimate purposes for which personal data, digital personal data, can be used is when the state or any of its instrumentalities is performing any function under any law for the time being in force, or in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India or security of the state. Now, by the time the court processes help me, show that nothing in my words actually went into affecting the sovereignty of India, a full legal process would have been unleashed on me, and I would have gone through the rigors of bail, finding sureties, I don't know how many days of incarceration, and so I feel like, so the third problem with these laws is the usage of these broad terms, and which are enabling arbitrary exercise of powers by the police. So I feel that in that sense, these regulatory developments, these legal developments, are only increasing police powers and reducing procedural safeguards for me.
Thanks, Megha. That's enlightening. A law which is supposed to give rights to people to protect their data, that how it can be used in a completely different fashion to kind of take away your rights. Meghnad, we have seen a lot of instances of content being blocked these days, handles being taken down. What do you see? Like, What is the trend? Where are we going?
So one thing is, I feel like we need to look at how these quote unquote regulations are being implemented also. Like, so all the laws that they have done, they have the word protection in them, but as Megha pointed out correctly, they're actually anti people. Right? They will take away your rights whenever they want. They will exclude themselves from applying any law on themselves, which is the government I'm talking about. So it's completely doing the opposite, right? The second thing is about content takedowns. Um, I feel like the government is constantly trying to find levers with platforms, like which will sort of bully them into action. Right. For example, we saw in the case of Twitter, which is now X, Elon Musk only admitted, like openly admitted that, listen, we have to listen to the government, warna mere log jail chale jayenge. Right. Like that, it's that bad where a platform owner is publicly admitting and saying that if we don't listen to the government and take down certain content that they're telling us to take down, हमारे लोगों को harass करेंगे और जेल में डाल देंगे, right? Now, if Elon Musk is saying this, I'm pretty sure Elon Musk is not the only person they have tried this with. Twitter is not the only organization they've tried this with. Um, Unfortunately, people from Meta, Google, all these big platforms, if you talk to them, they will also tell you stories of various ways in which they are being pressured and harassed by the government, right? And as Megha pointed out correctly, they will use different laws. They will use the IT Act, they will use PMLA, they will use other UAPA or whatever acts they have, which have been specifically designed to punish very specific people or groups of people who are making them uncomfortable. Those will be used to bully their way through with the platforms, and then the platforms will be forced to sort of take action and remove content on whatever is the government is asking them to. Um, I have an issue with what Mr. Lahiri said earlier, where he made the definition of, he gave a definition of of news people, right?
A
Uh,
media outlet.
a media outlet, right? Sir, the problem with such definitions is if you include audio, visual, whatever, and then who is giving news content, it is very, very different now how we deliver news in general. Right, the definition of news itself has become so dynamic, right? That you cannot like put people in this because everybody can be included or cannot be included at the same time. It is completely based on the authority on how they will define news also, right? So for example, if some YouTuber who is doing a cooking video and talking and complaining about the price of pyaz can be said that is giving news, right? And then the government can take action against that cooking channel also. So the thing is, they make definitions which are so broad, which can be selectively used, so we need to be really, really careful of that, right? And that is being seen across the board. I feel like we need to step back and ask a very basic question which nobody is asking. One, should we regulate the internet? If yes, why? And B, how do we do it? Right? Because this question nobody is asking. Like, they are treating the internet like TV, like radio, like everything like a broadcasting medium. It's not. It's just not. Right? So like there is a desperate need to reimagine regulation as we see it, because media on the internet is not the only thing that is happening. Information sharing is what is happening on the internet, right? So do you want to regulate information sharing then? That is a question we need to ask. And about the content takedowns, I feel like platforms definitely need to stand by their creators, which is unfortunately not happening today. Creators are the reason why platforms earn money, plain and simple. We are the ones who are bringing in the audiences. We are the ones who are creating the content. We are giving them eyeballs and they are putting ads on it and they are earning money. So platforms are completely dependent on creators. And I believe that platforms, it's about time for the platforms to side with us and protect their own business also, not with the government. Unfortunately, it's the latter right now.
Thanks, Meghna. Geeta, since yeah, we're also running short of time, Uh, Gita, one major issue, since we have all talked about problems, we definitely know that there are a lot of issues. So, but what can really be done? What is it that we can, we as lawyers, journalists, what can we really do to do something about this?
Uh, okay, I think, yeah, first of all, I had a question for Megha, if I, very quick one. Because we generally look at the DPDP Act in terms of how it's going to affect us as journalists. I mean, we don't have the exemption of public interest anymore when we want to seek information. And the RTI also has been watered down in the DPDP Act. But the question you raised, I think, is important about procedures. Uh, when in Prabir Purkayasta's case, for instance, and many of the journalists whose devices were picked up. So there's absolutely no protection. What about the kind of, this whole exercise of getting hash values and other things? That just doesn't seem to be of any use anymore. So it's really, we're all up for grabs in that sense. It's quite disturbing. And, and I also want to
Also, Geeta, if I
answer.
may add,
Yeah, yeah.
in the broadcasting bill draft that they had a seizure clause, basically, which said that the officers can just show up at your doorstep, take your equipment away, and you have no right to basically even know why they have done it until they tell you, which is so bizarre to me because, I was just talking to someone about this. So, I created a channel a year ago. I put in all of my savings into my equipment, right? The mic is expensive, everything is expensive, right? Like all the software, etc. If they tomorrow come and take everything away, I'll go bankrupt. Like literally my
That's
source
that,
of income is gone,
that
right?
happened to some of the news click journalists. They
Exactly,
didn't have
exactly.
their devices.
And that threat just goes to another level then, which is like you're taking away our right to earn a living, which
Absolutely.
is even way worse than, I mean, ठीक है मैं जेल तो चला जाऊंगा, maybe मुझे कभी मैं बाहर आ जाऊंगा, but if you take my equipment away, I
Hmm.
don't have the money to replace it.
And you're
Even
not
in
going to
fact,
get compensation for it.
even when it comes to takedown of content, in many cases, the users are not informed about this. Content creators are not informed about why your content is taken off. The information is sent to intermediaries. They are asked not to inform because there is a confidentiality clause in the rules. So you can't inform. In fact, we were before the Delhi High Court the other day where there was an application called Brad, an open source application. They were blocked, mainly in Kashmir. But they were not informed about there is a block or why it is being blocked.
Yes.
And finally, the court ordered at least to give us a redacted version yesterday. Yeah.
Another version of that is demonetization. So during the elections, 12 of my live streams were demonetized and YouTube didn't give me money for it because the government was asking them ki, anybody who mentions EVM should be demonetized. So it's bizarre. Like the ways in which they can control and crush independent media and content on the internet is just expanding and expanding. It's just not stopping anymore.
Yeah, and Meghna, you did raise this important question. Do we want the internet to be regulated, and why and how? And I think that, I was thinking about it, and this is a question that keeps coming up from people who say, what about the dark net? What about the hate speech? What about all the other, really sensational stuff? Like, for instance, the people who put out videos and the identity of the alleged rape and murder victim in Kolkata. This keeps coming up. And of course, these have to be regulated. There's absolutely no question of any kind of transgression of the law, and especially laws that we will accept need to be there. The question for me is the way in which they're regulating entry level into internet by this kind of by having the broadcast bill which they've withdrawn, but will definitely come back in some form or the other. The attempt is continuously to provide some sort of regulatory mechanism at the very entry level, and then to weed out people, and then to insist that there will be some sort of way in which they will pin down people who are using the net. And we know, from what we've seen, who they go after.
Yep.
I'll quickly answer the question that Prashant raised, and then I think we can have more. I feel that in such situations, and I mean, from what Meghnad himself just said, there is, we desperately need to have support networks for people who face any kind of cases against them or who are completely isolated. And it's a very, very lonely battle often. So apart from the other aspects of insisting on strengthening judicial mechanisms, insisting on having strong investigations of maybe the killings and attacks on journalists, and and having speedy trials, so that the process doesn't become the punishment. Apart from all of that, I really believe that we need to have much better strengthened support mechanisms for people who are out there, who are putting their jobs, their reputations, their lives on the line, and then are completely isolated when they are under attack. So that's, I think, very, very important. Even providing some kind of personal support for them, apart from, loss of livelihood and other things.
If the time permits, I just want to add two lines.
Yeah.
One, firstly, what we feel that if the government feels that media role perform a role of like public service, then it should be free from executive control. There should be some mechanism there. The government executive doesn't have any role. Number, it's an ideal situation. I don't know when it can happen. Secondly, what you said about the legal help, etc. From the Press Club of India, we have formed a legal cell. It's a very, very private stage. We try to rope in all the lawyers, like-minded. We are trying to reach out and trying to create a database on how many journalists are harassed, what is the case, particularly in the districts. So we are already in touch with the many press clubs and trying to create a database. Hopefully, we will come up with you, publish it. And before that, once again, I will say I will circulate to you our Media Transparency and Accountability Bill. If you have any suggestion, you are welcome, and we will gladly accept those suggestions. And we will have a discussion on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think we'll go for, let's say, closing remarks from all of you. Like, I'll start with Meg. 1 minute, please. All, yeah.
Yes. No, I'll only say that as a lawyer, I feel the need that, of course, the weaponization of the legal system against those who speak, and also just generally, I'm constantly emphasizing that these laws make our everyday life, mundane life, subject to surveillance and policing, and we need to challenge that. We need to challenge the weaponization of the legal system against journalists and everyone, and we need to identify those parts of the legal process which actually are used to persecute people who speak their mind. For instance, the Puttaswamy framework, however not so good it is, but we need to sort of want to enforce that. A government can access private data, but only under certain thresholds mentioned in Puttaswamy: legality, legitimacy, and proportionality. The proportionality leg is what we need to focus on when we demand, when we demand something in return for breach of privacy. So I feel like we need to focus on those parts of the process which are actually used to persecute more. And it's a long battle. We'll have to fight it out in courts and also on the streets. So it'll have to be a mix of both.
Thanks. Meghnad?
Hello. Yeah. So I feel like Mishi had asked a very good question, which is about misinformation. I think Geeta also mentioned this, if there is misinformation and, even hate speech or something coming out on the internet, we definitely need to regulate it. I want us to think in a little different way, right? There is a epidemic right now of scams happening in India through the internet, right? Which is, people getting scammed out of their money through their Aadhaar cards, through their bank accounts, through whatever, how that works. Like there is an entire TV series on it, Jamtara. My thing is right now we need to spend more money and time focusing on digital literacy. Like we really, really need to tell our kids, what is the internet? What does it do? What is it useful for? Right? If you are entering the internet and seeing Twitter for the first time and trying to adopt your behavior through how people behave on Twitter, you are going to be a disaster wherever you go. Right? You will always be doing engagement baiting. You will always be cursing and fighting with people, and you will just not be like a normal human being on the internet. I feel like we need to desperately do like a Swachh Internet Abhiyan, which is essentially like a PR campaign to tell people the internet is a gift. You need to treat it with respect. You need to basically also understand that it is a way for people to earn money in legitimate ways, and look at the ways in which you can earn money in legitimate ways. Right? Use the internet for good, not for horrible things. But then unfortunately we are working with a regime which use the internet for those horrible things. So it's very too much to expect from the current regime. But I hope somebody is listening. Someday they will, instead of focusing so much on regulation and punishment, they will essentially also focus a little bit more on digital literacy and education.
Thanks. Hope we don't have a Pradhan Mantri Internet Swachh Abhiyan soon.
I actually will welcome it. I will welcome it. Like,
Yeah, Gautam.
Well, I have spoken already, so nothing to add. Only thing that keep this kind of interaction on a regular basis and try to rope in more people, those who can give an idea. So then collectively, now is a time to prepare an action plan. We know what is happening. Everybody is now alert, everything, whether digitally alert or not, but they are alert. Point is now an action plan is to be prepared. How to go about it, how we should move forward, how we can create a pressure on the government. That's the way, actually, both in this, as says Meghas, I think, in the street and also in our boardroom.
Geeta.
Well, I think, important points from everyone. Megha's dismantling of the various provisions that we have, and so many more, of course. What Megha said about digital literacy, I cannot second more. And also what Gautamji spoke about, the need to bring back that kind of discussion on, the importance of media ownership and other such discussions. But what I would also like to stress really is the legitimacy of debate and discussion, which we have somehow lost. And this kind of culture of allowing for debate, free discussion, especially in academic spaces, in schools, colleges, universities, this kind of demonizing of dissenting opinions, contested histories, we really have to bring back that entire culture of debate, I think, which we've lost. We've really lost that, and we need to bring that back.
Okay. Thanks everyone. With that, we'll hand it over back to Asif. Asif, over to you.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you, everyone. So, with this, since we have already crossed the time, so we will conclude this learning call. And I would like to extend our heartfelt, thank to all the panelists and participants who took their time out and joined us on this weekday. Definitely to our esteemed panelists, your thoughts and perspective with deep knowledge and experience have literally enriched this discussion and helped us understanding the nuances in surrounding the freedom of speech and expression. As Larry sir said, we definitely would like to extend and work with you on your bill, and SFLC has been engaged, on issues relating to freedom of speech and expression. To our attendees, thank you for your participation. And definitely, I would like to thank and express my gratitude to the organizing committee and team at SFLC for their hard work in bringing this important conversation to life. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, everyone.
So much. Bye.